at certain parts of the year, London will flood and be underwater, including the XL. So, that sort of thing means that perhaps for parts of the year, venues aren't going to be able to operate. We're likely to experience drought again in the south of England, where we are rationed. And these are things that are going to happen within our lifetime, next 5 to 10 years. And I don't think people really understand those ramifications.
Welcome to The Meeting Room. My name's James Lancaster, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Anna Abdelnoor, founder and CEO of the event sustainability body Isla. But before all that, a quick video from our sponsor. Anna, welcome to the studio.
Oh, it's very nice to be here.
I think most people in this industry will have either heard of Isla or heard of you. But for those who haven't, just give us a bit of background. Who are you? Who are Isla? And how did you get into this line of work in the first place? What attracted you or what drew you to sustainability?
Great questions. Yes, so my background is in events. I was an event producer for a long time. Before that, I'd actually worked in mental health, so it was an interesting overlay. But I was an event producer for a long time. I worked mainly agency side. I had done some work with production and venues, but it was for sort of corporate clients, big tech, fashion, etc. And I loved it, but I hit a point on a project where I had a £350,000 budget to spend on graphics for a 2-day-long conference. And it just sort of smacked me in the face how much money I was actually about to put in the bin, because that was the reality of it. And it just got me thinking. And it was at the time when Greta was, at her high points, I think, saying, you adults. And I was, yeah, you adults. And I realised I'm not a 14-year-old girl anymore. I am an adult. She was actually talking to me, anyone who has the power to do something. And as adults, we do all have the power to do something. We control our money, we control our actions, and it doesn't always feel like we have control over the bigger picture, but we can control what we do with our time and our resources. And it just made me look at what I could do, what were my skills, how could I contribute? And I realised that the best place I could put my focus was into the industry I knew best, that I knew had massive problems with waste, with carbon. And so I did. And I very much had no idea what I was doing when I started.
So when was this, 2019, 18?
It was in 2019. So I think my last freelancer project was delivered in October, I think, 2019. But it was during that period, I think, across that summer that I'd come to this realization. And so within that role, I started having conversations. There's loads of great event freelance networks, event production networks, and just I ranted basically into some of those, and it really resonated with lots of people. And it made me realize that there was such an appetite to address these massive issues, and there wasn't anyone doing that, or at least I spent a long time looking for people who are doing that, and there are a handful of names that came up repeatedly, but I didn't feel that they were moving the dial forward, truly. And so I sort of took things into my own hands, corralled a bunch of agency leaders together who I'm very grateful, sat down with, at the time, someone they'd never heard of in most instances, and let me tell them off. But yeah, it led to real action. Obviously, COVID was a bit of a dampener in the sand. The action, what it was focused around was the idea of measuring the impact of the event sector, the environmental impact, saying what are our carbon emissions, what's our waste profile, and what's actually driving those. So it wasn't just saying, hey, can we put a figure in the sand for what the emissions are, but what actually is contributing to those. And if we can understand where the hotspots are and how those hotspots are being driven, then we can find out what levers need to be turned, what we need to pull on, what cogs need to shift, and how we intervene. And I mean that in the sense of not just saying, oh, travel's a hotspot area, but what is driving that? Is it first class flights? Is it, flights that could be replaced by rail? Is it particular routes, particular event types, those sorts of things? And again, from a production perspective, we know that waste is a problem. We throw lots away. But saying, okay, well, what materials are we, what's the number one material that we're throwing away, and why are we throwing it away? And if we can see that, then we can act to change the circumstances. If we're throwing it away because it can't be managed in the waste system, let's get a material that can be managed in the waste system, or let's create a waste system that can accept that material. So it was all about interventions, really.
So Isla was born out of this. COVID came along, and then everything stopped for COVID, or how did you carry on after that?
Yes, everything stopped. So we were due to launch in March 2020, this initiative with these, I think it was 15 agencies at the time who had committed financially and resource-wise to participate in this initiative so that we could publish a report in 2020. And then COVID, March, the rest is known. So we just stopped. But there was such an awakening at that time, I think, globally. Everyone could see the difference, that a change in how we worked, the pace of our lives, what we were doing, actually had tangible positive impacts on work, life, and environment, and so on. And so it felt kind of crazy to not leverage that and to not kind of bring that agency group together and say, hey, we can still do something. Maybe it doesn't look like measurement right now, but what does it look like? How do we collaborate? How can we, look at educating the industry? How do we facilitate dialogue and start unlocking some of those solutions? And that is how Isla came to be more of a movement, a community, a focus on transforming the industry for the better of the planet, for the better of the industry. And yeah, that's how we sort of got to where we are today.
How far has the industry come, the business events industry, the events industry wider? How far has it come down this path towards sustainability and, more crucially, I suppose, net zero?
That is a good question that doesn't have a straightforward answer. If you assume that we are walking on the same path, I'd say we've gone backward.
Backward.
Yeah. But also if you realise that the path has widened as we've walked along it, and it's evolved and there are more routes that we can take and crossroads and forks, I'd say we have moved down that path. If you look at it on a very narrow lens of has the industry made actual tangible progress in reducing its impact? No, it hasn't. We're still delivering disposable high carbon events. There's a lot of efforts. There's a lot of work that is being done. And we certainly see that within our community, particularly within the Isla membership. There is a huge amount of work, a huge amount of individual progress, and it's brilliant to see that. And change is slow, change is small, progress is slow. It doesn't happen overnight. And so it's that bit around the path has widened. People are more aware. There are more people aware. There is an understanding that something needs to be done. So the path we're on is not the same one that we were before, which was blindly going ahead and not doing anything and not making progress. There is an intention and there is work being done.
So that's the forward momentum. When you say backward, what do you mean?
Well, I suppose I meant in the context of looking along the same path. Backward, that we're delivering under shorter timeframes, often with tighter budgets, with less talent in the industry, and with more demand for sustainable solutions and less commitment to them once projects are underway. And I think that's what I mean by backwards, is that awareness is there, the awareness has grown, the forward momentum is there, but the actual doing there's a gap between where we were before, which was slightly ignorant, and where we are now, which is aware but still doing the same things.
Why is that? Is it because the industry is recovering still from the pandemic in a sense of staffing and expertise? Did it lose some expertise? Is it because inevitably when you see more of what has to be done, it's more overwhelming? Why is the progress so slow?
I think it's the latter point, which is that the more you realise the scale of the problem, the more difficult it becomes to think about how you do anything within that. And we don't have we've talked about this, I think, about how the industry is really fragmented. It's hard to bring the fragments together and work out how to build a complete picture to say, okay, well, now that we've got that view, these are the things that we need to do. And, sustainability has been commercialized, which is fine on one hand, from the perspective that I think businesses should look at commercializing solutions that deliver better outputs and better impacts. And they should be looking at how to scale those as quickly as possible. And we'll see then more adoption across the industry. But sustainability as a service has been highly commercialized. There are so many providers, working in sustainability broadly myself, not just within kind of event specific. The network it's the Wild West. It's everybody's out there. You got the cowboys, you got the the people who are trying to take advantage of it, and they're not bad people, but see an opportunity, see something, a way that they can help, and so they get involved. And so I think I've said this before, that people are buying solutions, but they don't know whether they're buying from Costco or Whole Foods. Because that is the state of the sector. It's not regulated. It's not, it's not regulated, and I think that has an impact. Anyone can do sustainability, and indeed, people have asked me, what makes me qualified to deliver sustainability, and it's a reasonable question. Other than working day in, day out in this space, having built carbon measurement platforms, having delivered strategies, having developed frameworks, this is I live and breathe this. So that is what makes me an expert, because it's experience. If we want our 10,000 hours, then my clock has been racking them up. But I think the point is that there are commercial solutions that aren't tackling root causes. People are putting their money into these solutions, and that's not helping to move the dial forward, because the industry needs direct investment. Really, the best thing that the sector could do would be to create some kind of innovation and investment fund for transformation, for research, for pilots, for being able to do the work, because it does all cost money.
So the industry's attempt to bring all this together, I suppose, is net zero carbon events, isn't it? What do you make of that?
I think that industry alliances are highly important. I think it's really important to have kind of that cross-sector collaboration. I'm not sure it's fully cross-sector. It's very exhibition and organizer focused. And I think it's a victim of the industry in that it's fragmented, not the initiative itself, but I mean, what are events? You almost asked me that question, like, oh, so Isla's for the business events industry. And I'm like, well, it's events broadly. So yeah, primarily business events, but then you've got sporting, touring, cultural, music events. All of those things have kind of corporate touch points as well within them, whether it's the sponsorships, activations, experiential. It's so broad and so diverse, and an event can be, something with a £500 budget that, is someone launching a product, standing in King's Cross, handing out samples, right through to the multi-million-pound, billion-dollar events like, FIFAs and Olympics and those sorts of things. So I think, I applaud and support any initiative that's intending to bring the industry together and collaborate. I think that's important.
Do you think it will achieve its aim of decarbonising the sector by 2050?
If the sector steps up, but I think that will be the sector stepping up. I think the aim will only be achieved if every player is engaged in the work, and the work isn't necessarily about doing things, about harder work. It's just about working in a slightly different way.
Your idea of an investment fund, that's interesting. Talk to me a bit more about that. What would that achieve that maybe current frameworks aren't achieving?
Innovation requires investment, and the industry needs to innovate because it is stagnant. I mean, we've got a bit better. We're not using sort of wooden backboards with paper plastered across them to create exhibition booths now, and we've got shell schemes and more reusable environments. But we operate on a grid system for events, because you sell things by square meterage, and therefore it looks and feels the same as it always has done. But events are created to for the serendipity, for the opportunities, for the business deals that come from it. And the events industry, particularly within the exhibition and the association world, wants to talk about impact, economic impact, uplift, contribution to the economy, and all those sorts of things. And I think there's lots of different ways that the sector can contribute to economic uplift, and economic equity and justice as well, actually. So we just do things in the way that we always have done, because there is nothing stimulating innovation. Technology, billions invested into research, development, startups, pharmaceuticals. I mean, there's an argument that the investment into pharmaceuticals on a commercial basis has actually resulted in some stagnation of R&D, and there's quite a lot of stats to suggest that. But the point is that billions of money is invested into research and innovation. It happens everywhere. There's lots of money invested into those initiatives that are looking at commercial return only, that ROI piece. And I think innovation into sustainability is looking at ROV, return on value, or value on return, maybe, not VOI, value on investment. But the point is that the industry doesn't innovate. And I'm sure it will hate me for saying that, because we're a creative sector and we're problem solvers, but we solve the same problems over and over again. Client wants to add 100-person dinner. We've got 2 weeks to the event. Or, oh my God, so the printing's gone wrong. We need to reprint. It's that kind of problem solving. It's not actually saying, hey, what are the big issues that we face? The tons and tons and tons of waste. And how do we actually innovate to resolve that? Because it's crazy how much money is put into throwing stuff away. I'd love to do some kind of economic studies around that and look at what the events industry is investing into the waste management systems, and how that could be perhaps addressed and turned into actually, circular commercial value for organizations.
So how do we get the cogs moving, the wheels turning? How do we actually break this sort of, what seems to me like a sort of stagnant, like an impasse, really? How do we get things to change?
Give Isla loads of money so we can crack on with the work. We have proven ourselves over the last 5 years. We've done things that no other organisation is doing. We've published reports. We've got data from thousands of events from Trace. We have got people using it, hundreds of organisations, thousands of supply chain businesses. We are making it possible for people to measure and get insights. We've published reports. We're publishing frameworks. We have developed, brought people together for action groups that are actually moving things forward, and we've created a momentum. And our membership in particular very much feels the benefit of that. The community aspect, this is what we breathe. The entire team at Isla, day in, day out, is looking at event industry transformation, and we've got an incredible team, and we've got ideas, solutions, tenacity, creativity. So what we're lacking is investment capital from across the industry. And I think that would be a great way to help us make progress as a sector.
You've changed your sort of operating model, haven't you? How does that change Isla as an organisation? Does that mean, do you still carry the mantle of being this organisation that wants to decarbonise the sector?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. The membership has been such an experience. It has been, I didn't set out to establish a membership. Like I said, it was all about kind of reporting and understanding and looking at how we could intervene. The membership was a result of COVID, and I'm really, really grateful to COVID for that, because what it did create was a community of event businesses which wouldn't have existed otherwise. And we've been able to kind of tap into that membership. We've heard from them, listened to them, surveyed them, spoken to them day in, day out. I mean, the membership is, even though it's discontinuing at the end of this year, designed around education, facilitation, dialogue, knowledge sharing. And so we have literally had conversations with thousands of people, thousands of conversations. And that's been so useful and so insightful to help shape our thinking. But the membership is not a way to scale the mission. The mission is, circular, low carbon events industry. because it's better for the industry, it's better for everybody within it. I think it's got a lot more commercial viability for lots of different reasons, and we need to go in that direction. So the fact that we're not delivering a membership program, to come back to your question, trying not to go off feast, the fact that we're not delivering a membership program doesn't detract from the fact that we're still delivering a mission. It just broadens the scope of who we work with and why we might work with them and how we can work with them. So absolutely. The membership's been incredible, and the team that have delivered that over the last 5 years are brilliant, and really proud of all the stuff that the members have achieved. And I think that's part of what I'm able to say, is that we can see that progress is being made. We get to hear those stories.
Straight question. Do you think the industry can decarbonise by 2050?
Yes, I think it is possible for us globally to decarbonise before the middle of this century. What I think we might lack is the will, and perhaps the understanding of the true ramifications of not acting. And I think there's a huge gap between knowing that something needs to be done and understanding what needs to be done and why. And I think the event sector is completely blind to what is going to come down the road as we reach critical environmental tipping points. And that's when it starts getting into kind of the science. It starts getting into kind of real scare territory where it becomes overwhelming and we shut down. Humans have got very good at not thinking about the fact that that we'll die. You can carry on with your life knowing that we're a little, sack of meat that's at some point going to pop our clogs. And we manage to do all sorts of amazing things as human beings. We've got a brilliant capacity for kind of shutting off from, the terminality of being human. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time with sustainability and climate science, is that it's overwhelming and it's disconnected and unrelatable to your day-to-day life. But we have been having autumn in August, which is high summer. Trees are dropping their leaves. Everyone, you will have noticed it, assumedly, particularly in the UK, that we have gone into an early autumn. Trees are wintering. That is a result of climate change. Now, that's the direct, tangible stuff. Doesn't really matter on your day-to-day life at all. It's just leaves falling off the trees. That has so many different ramifications across the food ecosystem, and it's highly likely to see us having either shortfalls or gluts of certain types of food over the next few months. That's going to change prices. That's going to change prices for event planners who for event planners who are buying meals in 6-9 months time, because our entire food ecosystem is different, and those things are only going to get compounded, and that's one sort of example of how the event sector will be affected. So costs will rise as a result. Flooding, that's there is some studies that suggest that by 2040, with sea level rises as a result of climate change, that most of the year, at certain parts of the year, London will flood and be underwater, including the XL. So, that sort of thing means that perhaps for parts of the year, venues aren't going to be able to operate. We're likely to experience drought again in the south of England, where we are rationed. And these are things that are going to happen within our lifetime, next 5 to 10 years. And I don't think people really understand that those ramifications prevent the industry's success, prevent it from thriving. You look at the stats, compound annual growth rates to reach 2.3 trillion by 2032. Yeah, maybe if we can host events by 2032. And I can talk about these things, but it also doesn't matter to so many people in the events industry, because when you kind of get into, sorry, that's incredibly dismissive. I don't mean it doesn't matter to so many people. It matters to so many people. But it doesn't matter to the day-to-day working of a large number of people. And I think you can probably segment this industry into those who deliver events and those who do everything else related to events. And the people who deliver events, they have a job to do. They get their head down. The doors are opening on this day at this time, and this is how long we've got to deliver this project. And they will get the project done. And they're incredible people. And, they're the ones that are the problem solvers and can resource anything. And then there is everyone else, those who are strategically growing businesses, business development, financial strategies, commercial strategies, M&A, the big players, the association leaders, they're the ones that need to understand this and need to be building resilience strategies and risk mitigation strategies, because the climate is changing. There's no way that we can turn the time back on that now. It's about saying, how do we limit that change for, the longevity of everything, but particularly the sector, because, there's a lot of people who are still expecting to have work available in a decade's time within the event sector. Who knows if they will, with some of the realities of these risks that are coming down the road that are not understood and need to be understood. And they need to be understood by leadership, not by event production teams. They've just got a job to get on with, and I don't think it should fall on their shoulders, and it often does.
How do we account for aviation? How do we account for travel?
I find travel to be a real misnomer. Not misnomer, that's not right. Overstated in how we think about the sector's sustainability story. It's one part of an event, and we can't decarbonise the aviation industry. It's going to have to figure out how to do that itself, and we will benefit from the results of it. But we can, again, this is what I mean about leadership and strategic leadership, is that how we use data and insights. And to bring it back to that point again, if you're not measuring what activity is being undertaken, you cannot identify trends. You cannot identify areas where you can intervene. So to that point about decarbonisation, we've just worked with one client, and we've been able to show them through measuring their data and analysing it that 50% of flights came from the UK to a European destination. And Europe and the UK have a brilliant international rail connection. And so if just 10% of those people were moved next year onto rail compared to flying, then the emissions would be saved by 5% roughly. Not huge amounts, but that's pretty good innings for, just moving 10% of half of the journeys. And so that becomes being able to put strategies in place and being able to look at how to decarbonise events through more improved and better managed travel logistics, not because of buying sustainable aviation fuel. If you could set a strategy of, we want to move 30% of people who can travel by rail but are flying to rail in the next 3 years, that's going to have huge implications, like positive implications. So I do believe that the industry can decarbonise whilst continuing to travel. Absolutely. And I advocate personally for travel. I think it's so important that we do that. But there is an excuse or there's a solution. And I think that the industry needs to err on the side of solution, not excuse.
Do you think more events should basically live online?
I think there should be more of a question around how event businesses are delivering connection between buyer and seller, essentially. I mean, that is largely what events are about. Yes, we have the knowledge sharing, knowledge transfer events, and I don't think those should live online. I think there's ways that components of them could live online, absolutely, but I think it's really important to meet and share face to face. But I think event businesses should be looking at what is the purpose of an event. It is not to bring people together, although that may be a sub-purpose. It is commercial. So what people want is leads, and what people want from those leads are deals. And that doesn't have to be done through traditional face-to-face event means all the time. So I don't think it's necessarily about making all events virtual or taking them all online. I think it's about being really clever about what events are being delivered in person and why they're being delivered in person. And then how do event businesses continue to connect buyers and sellers in a way that creates value for all three, organizer, buyer and seller.
Go back to square one and ask yourself why you're actually having the meeting in the first place, and the purpose of it is more important than making kind of knee-jerk decisions around being online or...
Yeah, 100%. That's strategy, and strategy doesn't have to come from someone who's been a strategist their whole life or been, works in that kind of role. And it doesn't need to be a 40-page long thing, but it's about saying, what do we want to achieve as an organisation, and that it really does come, I think, from that organiser level, organiser led. And I don't just mean event organiser, I mean, you know, corporate, association, wherever the event owner lives, about why are we doing this? What is the goal? How does it align with the organisation's broader goals? And everything should have that kind of, you know, through pull, as it were. There's lots of activity, we're very busy, and lots of things get done, and it's stuff shooting all over the place. You know, a business often has a strategy and it's pointing in that direction, but everything's still shooting off all over the place. You know, what needs to happen is that a business has a strategy and all the bits of that business need to also be going in the same direction, not going kind of all around. So I think, yeah, it is definitely about, I mean, it's really easy to sit here and say this. I get that. It's very difficult to reposition and adjust, but it is doable, and it is important to do that. And you can either make a choice, and actually that's what we've done recently at Isla with our, you know, we are retiring the membership program. We are retiring half of our revenue to ensure that all the parts of the organisation are strategically aligned around what we are trying to do, what our mission is, what our goal is to focus, lead and mobilise the industry. And that is a choice. It's scary, it's big, it's different, but it's a choice. COVID was not a choice. That was forced upon us, and absolutely everybody had to find a way through that and scrabble to keep their businesses thriving and surviving. But it did change a lot of the ways that people work. It did put, for lots of businesses, sustainability more into the central part of their strategy. Lots of organisations were able to diversify by bringing in virtual event sides of things and those kinds of capabilities. We did see event tech thrive in a completely different way. So change happens to us anyway, and you can either choose it or have it forced upon you. And it is a lot easier to choose it than to have it forced. And that's true in all parts of life.
It's been a beautiful summer, in inverted commas, in the UK. Record-breaking summer in terms of temperatures.
This is the coldest summer for the rest of your life.
This is the coldest summer for the rest of my life. And this was made 70 times more likely by climate change. So from a kind of, I'm loving life, an immediate kind of crash, this is serious. You deal with that on a daily basis. How does that impact your sort of mental health?
I struggle with it, if I'm honest. I do find it really difficult. I find it really difficult. And there are days when I just think, what's the point? I just want to run away. That's the truth. It is overwhelming. I said it earlier. It's hard I don't have kids. I don't want children myself. And a lot of people get involved in this work because they want a better future for their children. And I sort of am entirely selfish in that I want a good life for myself as well. You know, I want to be able to retire at some point and have a nice life.
What gives you cause or optimism then?
I'm not driven by optimism. I'm driven by the absolute dire need to do something. Something has to change. I have skills, I have abilities, I have expertise. And so that's where I'm going to put my time. Do I believe that we will change the outcome? Some days yes, some days no. I damn well would rather try.
What do you make of AI and its impact on sustainability? Is it going to help us save the planet?
Technology has never saved us. It's made us more efficient, which has meant that we can spend more time doing other things. Technology is a tool, a hammer is a tool, a computer is a tool, and it's all about who's wielding the tool and what they're using it to build. And so, yeah, I'm sure that it can help. I'm sure that there's going to be someone who uses AI to do something amazing that could be game-changing.
Thank you so much for coming into the studio, and we'll have you on again at some point.
Thank you very much.